Good evening and welcome to the Maplewood City Council Manager Workshop. City Clerk Sint, would you do the roll call for us, please?
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Here.
Councilmember Cave.
Here.
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Present.
Mayor Abrams.
I am here as well, thank you. And if you missed our EDA meeting, this is what a change of the season cold sounds like at the tail end. It is laryngitis. I am not contagious and I do not have COVID. I've got my tea and my throat lozenges, so I am good. It sounds much worse than it actually is, so I just have an FM voice, I guess. You can't hear that Minnesota twang quite so much when your voice goes really low. Anyway, okay, let's see. Moving on to the approval of the agenda, would someone like to make a motion?
I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve our agenda tonight. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have no unfinished business tonight. We have new business. And Mr. Sable, I think you're at least introducing this tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor and council members. The city of Maplewood has a historic pattern of doing community quality of life surveys. And over the course of maybe the last decade or so, we have historically used a paper version called the National Citizen Survey. It's usually sent out in kind of a mass quantity, and we generally hope for people to fill out a paper document, and then they collate the results. And then they do comparisons of those results against like cities around the country. Having gone through a statistics class in my younger days, I know that methodology is not often the best for getting a randomized sampling of survey participants, so the results that are often are skewed to people who have more time available, tend to be older, tend to skew whiter, and so historically you would get sample results that would be similar to that. And so as Maplewood has changed demographically, it didn't represent a true sampling of the community. There's a local research firm that does survey data for primarily counties, cities, and school districts. They do a randomized telephone survey, and so just by methodology, we feel like that level of input in survey methodology provides a better result. And so earlier this year, we engaged with the firm of Morris Leatherman to conduct this survey. I can't remember, the contract I think was approved in May, but the survey results were taken from July 14th to July 28th. And so with that, I want to invite Peter Leatherman from Morris Leatherman to talk about the survey results and then also some of the methodology behind why a randomized telephone survey does generally provide more accurate results than paper-based surveys.
Good
Absolutely.
evening and welcome to the council.
Super, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening to go over the results. I'll talk about the methodology and then I'll open up to questions on the methodology, demographics, and why we do what we do. As Mike alluded to, when you're talking about surveys, there's two different methodologies, primarily quantitative versus qualitative. With a mail-out or an internet survey, you have what's called, there's two biases up front. First off, in the metro area, between 8 and 12% of people don't have access to the internet. So it's difficult to take an online survey, and it's a very specific demographic. On the flip side, my 25-year-old son would disagree with me, but I would argue he's not going to go to his mailbox, get a mail-out survey, fill it out, try to find a stamp and put it back in the mailbox. It's not going to happen. And so you have that up front. Then what we traditionally see, and this is my 31st year of doing this, is that 25 years ago, when you looked at self-selection samples, they tend to skew about 10 to 15 points more negative. If you had an issue or an axe to grind, you were going to return the survey. What we do see now in those methodologies, especially school districts use it, is people try to win the surveys. Like a school district out in western Minnesota did a mail-out survey and an online survey at the same time, and it showed that 75% of people supported the bond referendum. Well, the district went out for it and it failed 40-60. If you looked at the demographics, though, it was about 70% households with children. Well, actual representation of households with children in the district was about 24%. So parents tried to win the survey. So what we do is a telephone survey. The demographics should line up with the census information. The methodology is on this first page. We spoke with 400 randomly selected residents across the community. Interviews were conducted between the 14th and 28th of July. Average interview time was 18 minutes. We did have 5% stay on the phone with us for over 45 minutes of their own volition. Those are your city historians. You probably know who they are. Our people, my interviewers, don't get paid by the call, they get paid by the hour. So if it takes 15 minutes or if it takes an hour, you're instructed to interact with the person on the phone. Non-response rate was 6%. Margin of error, plus or minus 5% in 95 out of 100 cases. The margin of error is determined by the size of the sample, not the percent of the population. So 400 in Maplewood, in Ramsey County, or the state of Minnesota is always plus or minus 5%. Putting up the first batch of demographics, 64% are cell phone only. They still exist. 8% are landline-only households, and then the remaining 28% have both a landline and a cell phone. If we look at how long has the person resided in the city of Maplewood, 23% have been here for 5 years or less, while 33% have been in the community for over 20 years. The typical resident's been in the city for about 13 years. But you have 43%, 10 years or less, 33% over 20 years. You have a little bit equal amount of what I call the newcomers and the settlers in the city. The transitions happen, it's tipping a little bit more to the newcomers, but the settlers are still a third of the community. The age, 43% are over the age of 55, while 19% are 18 to 34-year-olds. A typical resident comes in just under 50 years old. 32% have a person over 65 in the household, while 26% have a child under 18. Continuing, 71% are homeowners, while 29% are renters. If we look at the ethnicity, 54% indicate white, 22% Asian Pacific Islander, 11% Black or African American, 9% Asian, 4% indicate multi or biracial. And then women outnumbered by men by 2% in the sample. And for the sake of the geographic distribution, and I'll produce crosstabs for the city, so we can look at you can look at households with seniors versus households with children, homeowners versus renters, but then on geographic location. Just for clarification, looking at the map, the north is made up of precincts 5, 6, 7, and 8. The central is 1, 2, 3, 4. And the south is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, is how we cut the city. Now, people will always ask, do you ask the person what precinct they live in? Nobody knows what precinct they live in. From the sample that we generate, it's a database. I tell the computer, the database, give me 400 residents. It has it labeled with what the precinct is so we could know how to classify the person. So with that being the demographics, any questions on methodology, demographics?
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the information. I'm just curious on the phone list. Was that obtained by Ramsey County? What was the source of the phone contact list?
The phone contact list, it comes from a political database. The Obama campaign put together in 2008 and now is monetized. It's called an L2 database. Approximately 400 pieces of data on all of us. I don't care about whether you own a dog or not. I'm just looking for a phone number and a precinct in it. And I just have the computer generate a random sample of 400 from that database.
Thank you.
Yep.
No other questions?
All right, survey says. We start out with two open-ended. We haven't talked about anything yet. So let's find out what it's the top of folks' minds. What do they like most about the city? Your folks give very suburban answers, not surprisingly. There are a few what I call oases in the metro area if it's a small town in the middle of the suburbs. But for the most part, this reflects the typical seven-county metropolitan area and what they value. Their housing and neighborhood, their location. You do have friendly people in small town aspects. So you have about 1 in 4 that are reacting to those small town attributes. Good schools, safe, close to job, parks and trails through the list. So it is suburban things that they value. What's the most serious issue? And first off, when I look at this chart, does anything hit 25, 30, 35%? Are 1 in 3, 1 in
We
4
have
people?
one question
Oh, yes,
before you move
go ahead.
on. Actually, 2 questions. What does scattered mean?
Scattered are responses that are less than 2%. So idiosyncratic things, there are some interesting things that come up, and we just collapse them down into that category if it's less than 2%.
Okay, Councilmember Cave.
Just a question. When you're making a phone call, do people just give you these random answers, or are you soliciting
No,
questions?
these are open-ended, these first 2. So they can tell us anything. Some people will tell us 5 things.
Okay.
What gets coded is the first thing on the top of their mind as
Okay.
what's the most serious or what do they like most.
Okay.
So I have a person that goes through all 400 and collapses the open-ended down into categories.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So on the most serious issue, does anything hit 1 in 3, 1 in 4 people coalescing around a response? You do not have that. You have 4 items in double digits. The top 2 are not surprising. Though rising crime for a first-ring suburb, you're about half of what we're typically seeing over the past 3 years at 16%. High taxes are right at what we see, between 15 and 20%. Taxes, property taxes are the issue in Minnesota over the last couple years. Then traffic congestion. This one I'd put an asterisk next to, considering this was done in July, and as we know, well, actually, everything was still shut down this weekend, too. So that could be a sign of the times response at this point in time, and then too much growth are the 4 items that hit double digits. Also noteworthy down at the bottom are the nothings. So 5% are unsure. 20% challenge my phone reset. There are no problems, much to your surprise in Maplewood. This is utopia here. The nothing has diminished. The pandemic has made everybody less enthusiastic about everything. So my norms, when I do comparative norms, going back to 2019, it's a different world. The nothings now are down to about 7%. In a community in the suburbs. People have just found more things to be unhappy about, not surprisingly. So that's about 3x of what we typically see for that booster. And they're supportive throughout. Highly rate services, highly rate the council, highly rate communications. They are true boosters of the community. Now, what would they rate the quality of life? Overall, 92% rate it favorably. 8% rated only fair, nobody said poor. Before the pandemic, the typical range was 90 to 95%. Because quite frankly, if you lived in a community that was only fair or poor, you were going to be looking to move very soon. With inflation, interest rates and everything, it has limited people's ability. So now the norm quality of life rating is between 80 and 85%. So you have more folks in the favorable. You also have twice as many in the excellent rating, and that's what differentiates communities. Minnesotans are difficult to get enthusiastic about anything, even before the pandemic. Good is oftentimes good enough. So you do have a high level of favorability on the quality of life, and you have twice as much enthusiasm, that excellent rating. Now, how do they rate the city of Maplewood as a place to raise children? 86 to 11, and as a place to retire, 81 to 14. Now, as a place to raise children, it's right about the norm. As a place to retire, though, it's interesting because what comes into this is weather for people. As soon as I have the ability to leave Minnesota and get out of here, I do. So typically we see that at about 65, 70%. It has nothing to do with the community they're in. It has to do with winter. But still over 80%. Would they recommend the city to others? Absolutely, 90-5. How about the sense of community? This has taken a hit over the pandemic. For basically 2 years, sense of community was difficult to establish when everything was virtual. Events were canceled. The 86% is very strong right now. It has started to recover coming out of the pandemic, but still the norm is at 75%. So it's about 10 points higher for that sense of community in the city of Maplewood. Do they feel accepted, valued, and welcomed in the city? Absolutely. 96% agree with that statement. What's currently missing? This is open-ended. They can tell us anything. We collapse them down into categories. And this tells me there's nothing missing, okay? You don't have anything that hits 10%. For those of us that are old enough to remember old stereos with equalizers, where you were fine-tuning the sound, that's kind of where the city's at. It's not like something is way off in the distortion. It's just fine-tuning, whether some people are looking at sidewalks, some more police, some traffic enforcement, some streetlights, what have you. There's no major deficiency that residents are reacting to when they think about what's missing in the community. We went through and looked at the value, the importance of 7 characteristics. And we asked folks, is it very important, somewhat important, not too important, or not at all important? Well, first off, the red, I just combined the not very and not at all because there's so few people saying not very or not at all. And I differentiated between the very and somewhat, so you can get a sense of intensity, because the lowest level of importance you have is 88%. But you can see a hierarchy on where folks' value is if you look at the very important versus the somewhat important. And not surprisingly, it's public safety and it's schools. Then it's parks and trails, public transportation and shopping opportunities, recreational opportunities and programs, and community celebrations. So it gives you a prioritization, keeping in mind that they're all important in the minds of residents. So that's what they value. How do they rate the city of Maplewood on those characteristics? Well, this leads to the positive feelings people have, because you have very high ratings on these. So on the top, parks and trails, 94%, schools, 87%, public safety, 84%, shopping, 79%, community celebration, 77%, public transit at 66%. Public transit has the highest level of unfavorable, but it's still only 1 in 4 people, and keeping in mind that it's in the middle of the scale. So what's happening is what they see in the city on these characteristics is aligning with their values of what they think is important for the city to be offering or to be providing for residents. Overall assessment of the condition and appearance of properties, 95%. This one has dropped, especially post-pandemic, because people spent more time in their city and they saw a lot more things that they wouldn't have seen that they didn't like anymore. So this house bothers me, this road bothers me, this trail bothers me. So that 95% is just off the chart. Right now, the norm on this over the past 3 years is in the high 70s on the condition and appearance of properties. Code enforcement. I don't know what you've done here, but this actually probably goes back to the previous slide with the high level of support. You have the about right at basically 8 out of 10 people for all 4. For the storage of vehicles, yard maintenance, exterior home maintenance, storage of garbage cans. 8 out of 10 say it's about right. I always kind of chuckle with those saying too tough, knowing that they probably were cited and indicate that. But what's low is the not tough enough, especially the storage of garbage cans in the metro area is, you'd think, a crisis in some communities. And the amount of time council spends, that is typically in the 25 to 35% range of folks saying not tough enough. You actually, if you look and add the margin of error on all four of these, it's a perfect bell curve. You have equal amounts of people saying too tough versus equal amounts of people saying not tough enough. So whatever's been done on code enforcement has been very effective for residents. Overall, looking at city services, they can rate them excellent, good, only fair, or poor. Once again, there's not a lot of only fair or poor. So I pulled out the excellent versus the good, so you can see a differentiation. But you see a sea of blue instead of a red riptide. From the police, 91%. Fire services, 95. Sidewalk and trail maintenance, 83. Park maintenance, 88. Garbage and recycling, 83. Code enforcement, 76. Building inspections, 70. You have, not going to add to 100 because you have people saying, I don't have enough information. They don't know or refused. City street repair, well, it's 81%. It has the second highest level of unfavorable. That's an outstanding rating. In the metro area right now, if we're looking at summertime, the norm unfavorable is about 35%. In the wintertime, the unfavorable goes to 45%. So the street lighting is very well regarded. Snow plowing, 84 to 16. And the highest level of unfavorable is what we're seeing across the metro area on street lighting. Street lighting for the first 25 years of my career would always have 20% rated unfavorably. It'd be 10%, there's too much light, 10%, there's not enough light. What has changed now is you are at the norm of 30%. What's doubled is the number of people saying not enough. You still have 10% of people talking about the light coming in their window. But now it's a 70-30 proposition across the metro area, and that's a reaction to crime. And their concerns on that, and streetlight provides some sort of reassurance to them. Overall assessment on the value of city services then, 65% rate them favorably, while 27% unfavorably. You can see only 1% poor, 3% excellent. So the vast majority is good. What goes into, but you see the rating on the quality. What goes into this is the next slide, and this is the issue across the state of Minnesota, and that's property taxes. Whether it's the federal government, state government, impacting local governments, people's concern on property taxes has grown. 57% rated very high or somewhat high. I actually, my business partner and I just conducted a statewide survey that we pay for, that I share in the fall with education groups. I just shared it, ran it last Wednesday, shared it with AMSD on Friday. I'll be sharing it with MAMA in the first part of January. But we found you're right at the norm. Across Minnesota, 57% rate their property taxes are high. To give you a comparison, that's up 12 points since before 2020. It was about 44% in 2019. Would they support a property tax increase to maintain services? And then would they support a property tax increase to enhance services? On both of these bar charts, you're an anomaly. You're low on the number of people saying to maintain. You're high on the number of people saying they would support a property tax increase to enhance. What we typically see is everybody knows, especially over the last 3 years, it costs more for the same thing. So on a property tax increase to maintain, that's typically 65 to 70%. But on the flip side, what we're seeing also is, okay, I'll pay to maintain. Only 20% of people will say, I support a property tax increase to enhance. So you have double that amount. So you have a majority saying yes to maintain, a plurality against a property tax increase to enhance city services. Contact with the police department. Just under 1 in 5 indicate that they had contact with the police department over the past couple of years, and just outstanding result, because 19% of people, it was probably disadvantage, the contact wasn't necessarily in the best regards. They're pulled over, those sorts of things. 9 out of 10 rate that interaction positively with the police department. On this one, it's typically a 2 to 1 because people are upset on why they were pulled over, why they were cited, those sorts of things. So an outstanding rating of their experience. Do they feel safe living in Maplewood? Yes, 93%. That's about 18 points higher than what we're seeing in the first ring of the Twin Cities right now. Norm on that is about 75% currently in 2025. So people really do have a sense of safety, which is important going back to what did they value most at the top on that characteristics, and it was public safety. So it even gets down into the details then. Because what we're seeing is about a third of people now saying there's not enough police patrolling in my neighborhood, there's not enough traffic enforcement. You have 1 in 5 in both categories saying that there's not enough. Always funny to hear the stories of the 1 and 2% that said too much police patrolling and traffic enforcement. But this is what we saw before 2020. You do not have that growth of people saying, I want more police patrolling or traffic enforcement. Public safety concern, if we take out Minneapolis and St. Paul, the #1 issue in the metro area is reckless and dangerous driving. Doesn't matter if I'm in Brooklyn Park, Minnetonka, or now in Maplewood tonight. Reckless driving leads your list. This is open-ended, and 1 in 5 point to that. Everything else is in single digits. Residential theft to youth crime, gun violence, all of those. But you do have 1 in 5 at the bottom, 20%, that say there are no public safety concerns. In the metro area, the norm on that is about 5% right now. So I don't know, it really is impressive what's been done, but people do feel safe in the city of Maplewood, especially when I do comparisons across the metro area. Can they have a say about how things are run? 53% said yes, 24% said no, and 23% are unsure. The 24% that say no is right in line. What's high is the unsure. And so this actually, it goes back to like 2021 when I'd ask this question, and people say, I don't know, I don't tune into Zoom meetings or any of those sorts of things. So it's not that they don't feel empowered, it's probably just more awareness of opportunities to have a say. Because you do have the normal amount of people, about 1 in 4, saying, I can't have a say, which is always, Minnesotans have a difficult time differentiating between having your say and having your way, in a sense. Mayor and city council, the knowledge of the work of this council and mayor, 60% indicate a great deal or fair amount. This is life in a fishbowl, because the norm on this right now is about 35%. People aren't paying attention to local government. They're mad at the federal government, they're mad at the state government, they're not paying attention to local government. They're paying attention here. So one always wonders, when you have higher awareness, does that create more love or more animosity? It's a strong endorsement. They feel aware of what's going on, and 81% rate the work positively, only 8% rate it negatively. If I look at a ratio, it's better than 10 to 1 on the ratio. Norm on this right now is about 5 to 1, favorable to unfavorable. At the same time, there's a lot less awareness of what the council and the mayor their work is. City staff, 36% indicate that they've had quite a lot or some contact. Once again, just like council, 80% rated favorably, 14% only fair, nobody said poor. Better than 7 to 1 ratio on staff, about twice the norm. Very strong ratings on the governance and the administration. If we look at contact with City Hall during the past year, just over 1 in 3 indicate that they have. On the three aspects of customer service we looked at, using a threshold, for public service, it's always 80%. And you exceed 80% for all three. Ease of reaching staff, courtesy, and efficiency, 86, 86, and 80. Does development seem well-planned across the community? 52% say yes, 6% say no, 34% say sometimes. They hedge. There might be a project that they didn't like, so they can't say yes because it's kind of an all or nothing question, so they hedge on it, and 8% say unsure. If we look at some specifics on development, first off, we broke out the homeowners, keeping in mind this is 71% of the sample indicate that they own their home. Would they be interested in a city program for remodeling and home improvements? 58% indicated they are either very or somewhat interested. So on this one, you're not going to have 58% participate if you offer it. There's always a gap from intention to behavior, okay, with the specifics of the details. How much money, how much, all of the timing involved, all those sorts of things. So typically what you tell a client is you take half of the very interested and a quarter of the somewhat interested will actually follow through from intention to behavior, which would put it right at about 1 in 5 homeowners would be potentially interested in that sort of program. Would they support financial incentives to attract development? Yes, this has changed. In the metro area, this changed in the recession of 2008, 2009. Before that, people were opposed to financial incentives for development. And then the recession happened 17 years ago, and people all of a sudden thought, okay, we're competing for all of this. We do support it now. And you have support. 61% said that they support, only 19% oppose. 20% want to know what the development is for. They're the sometimes folks back a few slides ago that are going to pick and choose. But you do have a flat majority that support the financial incentives to attract development. Community characteristics. This is set up like a stoplight. Red, too many, too much, stop. Green, not enough, bring that in. Yellow, about the right amount. If we go down the bottom half of the chart, what I call, the non-housing parts, characteristics of the community, you can see it is pretty balanced from jobs in light manufacturing. Restaurants actually skews a little bit too many. You're one of the few communities that actually skews with saying there's enough restaurants. Retail establishments, service establishments, and entertainment establishments. The gap tips a little bit too much to too few. Where's the gap, though, more pronounced? If we look at condos, well, if we look at affordable rental units, it's a 21-point gap. 35% say too few, while 14% say too many. So it's a 21-point difference in favor of not enough. 21 point on condos and townhomes. 33 on affordable starter homes. Move-up housing and executive high-end housing, it tips to too much. Assisted living, a 12-point gap. One level housing for seniors, a 19-point gap. So if you're looking at the themes, it is the life cycle housing concern. And it is the concern that comes up in communities that people rate positively that they're living in. At that point, they become concerned, are there homes for my children to move back into the community for? The starter homes, the affordable rental, the condos and townhomes? And is there a place for me to land when I want to downsize? The one level housing for seniors or assisted living. So that's kind of where they're at and their concern. If a person doesn't love the community they're in, they're not nearly as concerned about the aspect of life cycle housing because they're thinking of moving elsewhere. The Maplewood Mall. 41% indicate that they visited either frequently or occasionally, 59% rarely or never. I'd love to have a data point, and I know we did the surveys back in the 90s for the community on what the number of people that I'm pretty sure that that's down from where we were 20 years ago. How do they rate their experience? 32% rated excellent, 42% good, 27% or 26% rated only fair or poor. So it comes into basically chunks of a third on their experience. Condition of parks and trails, 90% favorable, only 9% said only fair. If we look at use and ratings of the parks, so first off, this is a two-part question. We ask folks first, do you or members of your household use the amenity? Okay, so that's why the chart doesn't add up to 100%. So on large community parks, 56% of households said somebody in their household uses them. Then how do they rate them? Excellent, good, only fair, poor. Once again, there's very little unfavorable. I combine the only fair, poor. So on large community parks, 54-2. Small neighborhood parks, 61-5. The trails, 66-3. Nature preserve, 41-2. The Heritage Farm, 35-3. And on the Wakefield Community Building, 24-6. If we take out the community building, you have 90% or higher favorable on every component, normalized for those that use the facility. The community center, once again, be interested to look at the historical data, but I don't have the surveys from them. They're probably on a floppy disk somewhere in the 90s. For those old enough to remember a floppy disk. 64% indicate that they have not used the Maplewood Community Center. 19% indicated that they used it as a visitor, while 17% indicated they or someone in their household were a member. 3 statements of value on whether it is an important asset to maintain. On the community center, 76-3. On the farm, 73-4. And on the nature center, 75-3. Very strong sentiment in the community that it's an asset to maintain. I was curious on the 20, 24, and 23% that said they're unsure. The common theme through all of those, if I tell the computer to do an answer tree, what are the demographics, what are the other answers that feed into it? They're less than 10-year residents and they're renters on whether it's important value as an asset to maintain.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
In terms of 64% of people that you surveyed not going to the community center, but then if you look at whether or not people believed, those same people, whether or not they believed it was an important asset, 76% of people believe that it's an important asset. So I'm trying to kind of grapple with that. And what I was thinking, do people view it, though, as an important asset because it's a regional asset? They may not themselves go, but I mean, I don't, how do we reconcile that?
No, I think it's like an overarching. It's like the school system. I might not have kids in it, but it's an asset. I might not use the trails, but they're an asset to the community. So it's not about their own personal use, but does it go beyond their own personal use to whether it's a value or important to have in the community?
Okay.
Which actually speaks, when you think about it, to your point, only 1/3 of residents are using it, and 76% indicate that it's an important asset to maintain. Yeah.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you have the demographic breakdown of the community center, the farm, and the nature center? What that looks like in terms of where they support, where they sit?
I can break it down with the crosstabs. I don't have it with me tonight, but absolutely that'll be part of the report and in the crosstabs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Would they support a property or a tax increase? It's not couches of property, just a tax increase. Oh, I clicked it twice. There we go. For recreation improvements. 57% are persuadable, 10% would be for all, 26% are against all. Now, I work on a lot of school district referendums and levies. The against all, you're right at what we typically see. one in four. About 25% in any city, any community, any school district are against any property tax increase. Where you're low is the for-all. People are willing to have a discussion, but they're persuadable. It'll depend on what the funding will be used for and for what amenity. So on a property tax increase for a park improvement plan, on our let's make a deal question for property taxes, this isn't surprising now because it lines up to what we saw earlier on enhancement. 48% say nothing. 20% say $5 a month, 13% say $10 a month, 8% say 15 or more, 10% are unsure. On the sales tax option, you can see the nothing drops to where we typically are looking at for a funding request, less than 35%. 33% say nothing, 32% say a quarter cent, 16% say half a cent, 5% say 3/4 or more, and 15% are unsure. So it tips, and this is what we're seeing, which we've worked on a lot of the local sales tax option referendums that have been out there over the past couple of years, is there very much is a preference when you're looking for these sorts of improvements for the local sales tax versus the property tax, especially when you're talking about taking money in from folks that live outside the community that are still using some of these services. So when you pit the property tax versus the sales tax, you have 20% that say property tax, 3% strongly. You have 44% that say sales, 18% strongly. 21% say neither, and 15% are unsure. Now, part of this is we haven't talked about the specifics of what the funding's going to be used for. So that's going to create a greater number of people saying that they're unsure. But the takeaway is you only have 21% saying neither, okay? 4 out of 5 people are willing to listen to a discussion on what the funding would be used for. They differentiate on the method of the tax collection between property and sales, but they tip more heavily towards sales than property taxes. So if we look at 4 items and we ask, would you support a sales or property tax for each of these 4 items? You can see you do have over 60% support for all 4 of them. Improving park buildings, 66%. The YMCA, 65%. 61% the Heritage Farm, 62% the Nature Center. So when the details are put in, you really don't go above that 25% that say nothing at the outset, that I'm against all. There's support, it's just going to be on the method of it, with the preference tipping towards the sales tax versus the property tax. And then finally, where are folks getting their information? You have an incredible city communication network. I wasn't paid to say that. You have avoided what a lot of communities in the metro area have had happen as local newspapers have disappeared, where the grapevine becomes the #1 source in the community. Your newsletter at 54% as a principal source of information is outstanding. Then mailings, word of mouth is only 10%. The website at 9%, social media and cable television at 7% each, and the Pioneer Press and the Strip at 3%. How do folks prefer to receive their information? Well, their preference lines up with their current way of getting information. So you're meeting folks where they're at with the newsletter, mailing, social media, website, cable TV. They rely on the city. What has happened as local newspapers have disappeared, the typical grapevine is always younger families and neighborhood events, sporting events, those sorts of things. It's the old guys like myself who used to read the newspaper's gone, and now we just get together and gossip. And so that's the new grapevine that's exploded across the metro area. Providing a newsletter that provides them the information has filled that gap at a time where a lot of cities have tried to scale back on print. And then that echo chamber has been filled in by the grapevine. If we look specifically at the newsletter, 2/3 indicate that they regularly read it. 94% rate the quality favorably. On the website, 47% indicate that they'd visit the website. 96% indicate they were able to find what they were looking for. And then the upper right-hand corner, you can see 89% rate the ease of navigating it favorably. And then finally, on social media, we asked folks first, do you use it? So that's the red bar. You can see the normal, Facebook has the highest usership, followed by YouTube. Less and less people want to admit that they're using X or Twitter. That's kind of been an occurrence. They do, but they don't want to admit it to a pollster. It's just like, do you vote? Yes. Do you recycle? Yes. Do you look at X or Twitter? No, I don't do that. Then Instagram at 76% and podcasts at 86%. Would they use that, if they're using that social media source, would they use it to collect city information? Facebook dominates. Absolutely. You can reach 7 out of 10 people via Facebook, YouTube, followed by X, Twitter, Instagram, and then podcast. I would say just, I think overall in summary, it's a very positive report for the city. You don't have a lot we don't have our survey data to do a comparison. I think the last survey we did was probably in 20 years ago. So I'm not going to put up a data point from 2004 and draw a line between here and 2025. That's not fair. But when we look at those key factors and where cities have seen declines and how public sentiment and opinion has changed over the past 5 years, you don't have any of that. Was it there and it's regrowing? Has it always been there? I can't say. But it really is a strong position to be, where the city is not in a position where a lot of local governments are, where they have to change people's minds about how they feel about the government. They think something's only fair or poor. They disagree. They disapprove. Your challenge going forward is, how do you move more people from good to excellent? Which is a much easier place to be. You don't have to convert people. You just simply have to make them feel more strongly than they do today. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for this excellent report. Staff and council members, I think what it says is that we are doing a lot of things right. And it's nice to have that validated. I have to say that my time on the council, this is the most comprehensive survey that I have seen, and I find it very encouraging. Council members, anything else you want to say? Councilmember Cave.
I just want to thank you. When I went through it by myself, I was like, oh, we're not doing too good, really? And you explained things differently tonight, and I'm glad people are going to be able to see that too, because the numbers that we had, I thought, oh, they're not great, and you're like, yeah, they are. Because, so your explanation of things and where we stand in other, compared to the norm also is much higher. I'm so pleased. It's like from staff, and we feel it here, but to see it out in the community even more, by doing that random calling, yeah, I think this has been the best survey. Not only the results, but the information you got for us.
I
Has been
appreciate
great,
that.
so thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think it will really help us as policymakers, because we do have, some issues coming up in terms of the sales tax, and is that something that we need to do? We're going to be taking a tour of some of our buildings, taking a look at that, and this will help us make much better informed decisions. So thank you very much. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate this. The last survey that we did, I was concerned with the validity of it a lot. And so I think this is a very neutral, I find this to be a very valid survey that you guys have done. When I look at it across the board and looking at the sharing your methodology with us, I think that's important. I think the methodology makes a big difference in how
100%.
community respond to surveys with government. People are always afraid of government. So when I look at this, it's a legit one for me. It's valid for me. So thank you for providing this. As the mayor said, I think for decision making, this is a great tool for us. It's a great tool. So thank you for this.
than welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Sable.
I just want to thank Mr. Leatherman for the work on this. Right, it's quality work, and we appreciate it. I think one of the things that we know is you use translation services that can, you speak to the residents in the language that they want to be spoken with. And it's not lost on me that the Maplewood Living is important and people like it, and so we are building into our base budget an opportunity to make it 12 pages versus 8. I'm not going to suggest it happen every month, but there are certain months where there more content ought to be in there, and so right, if the community values it and they want to see and they use it, we should do more of that, and I think we can do it in a way that's cost-effective and actually helpful. So I have a lot of takeaways, but that was one of the ones I wanted to at least mention publicly and say thanks for that.
Yeah, when 2/3, not that they receive it, regularly read the newsletter. Yes, that's impressive.
Well, Mr. Leatherman, thank you so much.
Thank
There
you.
aren't any other questions. I want to
Pleasure.
thank
Thank
you
you all.
for helping us out with that survey. I think it will really help us as council members and our staff as well. Thank you. Council members, we do not have anything else on our agenda, and our manager workshop is adjourned.
3 minutes?
Let us take about 5 minutes, and then we will be back. We'll start at 7:15.